So today we're going to talk about one topic that's probably the topic I speak more about than anything else on earth, which is shortness of breath. So what I've been doing for the past 28 years essentially is taking care of people with cardiovascular disease and or respiratory disease. And the number one most common symptom that I hear from people is shortness of breath. Typically when people come to me, I say to them, why are you here? And they say something like either my doctor sent me, I don't really know why I'm here, or the breathing or the walking due to the breathing. And in New York City, the thing that I hear most commonly is I hear people talking about walking up subway stairs because in New York City, the subway stairs are long and steep. I hear people talking about walking uphill, and I have patients who can map out the neighborhood by where the hills are. I have other patients who can map out the neighborhood by where there's a place to sit down, like one of those pipes. And I have other patients who can map out the neighborhood by where there is a public restroom. And I drive 3 days a week to the Hamptons, which is a 2-hour drive each way. And I can identify with that, which is I know which exits have a place for me to stop if I need to either go to the bathroom or refuel on Red Bull. So shortness of breath, if you know my book, if you know my work, you know that I've said over and over again that shortness of breath is multifactorial. And what I mean by that is that there are many, many different factors that go into how well or how poorly we breathe. So in light of the fact that I have some cardiovascular patients here, some respiratory patients here, and some COVID patients here, I'm going to make sure that I address everything in a way that everyone will benefit from it, hopefully. And for the COVID patients, I just want to say that so much of what we're trying right now is based on our years' experience with cardiovascular and pulmonary patients. And with COVID in particular, it's a super challenge because unfortunately to this date, there's so much that we don't know. And, we have a history of heart disease that dates back probably centuries. We have a history of respiratory disease that probably dates back centuries. And we have a history of COVID that dates back less than a year. And so sorry, that was Monkey sneezing. God bless you, Monk. But the thing is that, we're trying different things. And the other thing that makes COVID so challenging is that everybody's so different. So as I look around this screen, I know so many of you, and whereas with heart disease, we could say, okay, you've had bypass with a general kind of prediction, we can say we expect this from you. If you have respiratory disease, whether it's COPD or pulmonary fibrosis, we could say, okay, you have COPD. This is generally what we expect from you. And there's going to be some variation there, but nothing like the variation that we see between COVID patients and often within the same patient from day to day or week to week, or sometimes even over the course of hours or minutes. It's a constantly kind of rapidly fluid type of situation. And so I would never come to a group like this and say to you, this is what you should or shouldn't be doing, okay? I'm not a believer in that anyway. I'm a believer in kind of giving people the tools and allowing them to learn and make choices for themselves. And with COVID, what we really have to do is we have to try to give you as many tools as possible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with breathing exercise, just because I think it's grounding and I think it's good for us to sort of like get rid of some of the jitters or the kind of anxiety or freshness or excitement or adrenaline that's coursing through our veins. And also it's grounding. It'll be oxygen delivering to your brain. And I'm going to talk about shortness of breath. I'm going to give you strategies to try out. And when I say try out, because that's what we have to do. We have to experiment. We have to try and err, and we have to try and succeed. And then I'm going to ask for people to give me or share with us, if you're comfortable, specific situations that relate to your shortness of breath so that we can try to problem solve together some of the causes of shortness of breath and what we can do for the different causes. All right, so first thing I want to do, and you can do this either sitting down. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to start sitting down, and we're going to do just a basic breathing scale. And the reason why we do this breathing scale is in the same way that an opera singer or a saxophone player or anybody else might warm up a little bit, okay? The airways have smooth muscle inside of them. And it's that smooth muscle that constricts and dilates that either allows for more airflow or constricts so that we don't get toxic materials into our airways, okay? And into our lungs. But the thing is that one of the things we know about certain conditions, COPD, asthma, not so much pulmonary fibrosis, but in COVID, we know that there's often a hyperconstriction of the airways. In other words, the airways are too active or too reactive, and it's almost like a hen house where, like, you know, everyone's just like, whoa, whoa. And they kind of just like are very, very reactive and overstimulated. And that is one of the hallmarks of COVID, which is that we know that it's an inflammation-driven condition. We know that there's a hyper activity of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight system. And we know that there's a lack of parasympathetic activity. And that all leads to this kind of highly charged, energetic state where it's hard to kind of get any calm within the body. And one of the things that I say over and over again is that I view this almost as an electrical grid, which is like once you trigger inflammation in one area, it seems like that can trigger inflammation in other areas. Between the neck and the abdomen, okay, or essentially in our thorax and our abdomen, we have a lot of different systems. We have the cardiovascular system, we have the respiratory system, we have the GI system. And one of the confusing factors or complicating factors is that very often the symptoms of one can mimic the symptoms of the other. And whereas if you mistake that bean burrito that you had for lunch for your heart and you treat it as if it's your heart, and it turns out to be the bean burrito, no harm done. But if you're having a heart problem or a respiratory problem and you minimize it to gas or something like that, well, that's a problem. But part of what we try to do is we try to educate you and get you to experience different things so that you can determine what's okay and what's not okay. And first and foremost, we always want to take care of things that are potentially going to be dangerous and especially life-threatening to you. So when I evaluate a patient and when I advise others on how they should be evaluating patients, my first and foremost is always going to be patient safety and risk stratification. And what I mean by that is I always want the heart ruled out first. So if anyone's having any type of chest pain, pressure, squeezing, radiation down the arms, or anything like that, the standard workup would be EKG, but most people who've had an EKG, it comes back normal, right? Because an EKG is just a moment in time. 24-hour or more Holter monitors, which is an EKG over time. So for people who have intermittent symptoms that come and go or that wake them from sleep or things of that nature, you have a much greater chance of catching it if you have a video camera playing for, you know, a week versus a snapshot, right? Unless you're having that problem at that moment of the EKG, then you are not going to catch it. And then ideally, we're going to get a stress echocardiogram because that's going to talk about the mechanics of the heart and also the electrical activity of the heart and also indirectly the circulation of the heart. When it comes to the neurologic system, the thing that we all worried about most was clots and strokes, okay? Clots and strokes. That's not what we're seeing in long haulers, okay? So we're not seeing people who are at risk for stroke at this moment, or not to say that it's impossible that you could have a stroke, but it's not the threat that we thought it was initially as it is in the acute phase. And then the other thing that we think about is the respiratory system. So again, respiratory system, one of the things that we talked about early on was people were worried about permanent changes, scarring of the lungs and things like that. In my personal experience, I have not seen a lot of that in patients. Now, a lot of people have chest x-rays. Chest x-ray is normal, okay? But a chest x-ray is not that complete. Less people have CAT scans, but many people have CAT scans that are also normal. And many people, even less people, have pulmonary function tests, which is spirometry, where you're asked to breathe in and out of the tube. And very often those are normal. So that begs the question over and over again, if my chest x-ray is normal, if my CAT scan is normal, if my pulmonary function test is normal, and if my oxygen is 98%, why am I short of breath? How many people does that resonate with? Sound familiar? Okay. All right, we're going to talk about those things. The first thing I want to do, I want to start with a breathing exercise. So just find a comfortable position. And the breathing scale that I mentioned is designed to stretch out and relax that smooth muscle inside the airways in the same way. Kate, I don't know if you're taking notes, but this will be recorded. So you're not going to catch everything I say, but I'd rather you listen and take it in than and watch the replay for things you missed and try to write it all down. And we have a transcript that will be posted each week with our things. So don't feel pressure to write. But the thing is that in many cases, when your airways are tight, so a lot of times people will report when they get going too quickly, or when they first start out with exercise, or when they go into the cold or things of that nature, they feel a pressure in their chest or a tightness in their chest. And this can potentially have to do with a tightening of the airways, okay? Now, one of the ironies of that, or one of the caveats to that, is that the harder you work to breathe in and out, the more air trapping you can get and the tighter those muscles become. So in other words, if you have a tight muscle, the kind of harder and faster you stretch it, the tighter and tighter it's going to become, and the greater chance you have of injuring yourself. So it's really important. And this is good advice with everything. I think it's good advice with everything in life, but I think it's particularly good advice with all things COVID, which is that when you're going to make a change, whether it be a behavioral change, an exercise or fitness change, a medication change, a supplement change, etc., a food change, anything like that, you always err on the side of going slower rather than going faster. And give your body an opportunity to take in the change, see how it responds, not just during the activity, see how it responds later that day and in the ensuing days afterwards. All right. When you're doing the breathing scales, and one of the things I particularly want to focus on today is recovery from shortness of breath, okay? So in other words, being short of breath is a terrifying experience. Not being able to catch your breath is probably one of the scariest things that can happen to us. And so what I want to do today is I want to show you a bunch of strategies that will, number one, hopefully prevent you from getting short of breath, but also so that when you get short of breath, whether it's when you're walking, whether you're eating, whether you're sitting and doing nothing, or if you're awakened in the middle of the night by shortness of breath, and I recognize that often this is accompanied by a racing heart, palpitations, vibrations in your chest and things like that. And I recognize that this is a very scary experience, but in the majority of cases, okay, it proves that it is not an acutely dangerous situation, okay? It is a scary situation. That is a cute puppy, Susan. So it's a scary situation. It can be terrifying, and these symptoms can kind of build on each other and cycle, which is that if you get short of breath, it induces anxiety. That anxiety puts out more adrenaline. That adrenaline makes your heart beat faster. That heart beating faster can make you short of breath. And before you know it, you don't know who's in control. And what I need for you to do, and what you need for yourself, is you need a way that you can stop this cycle. And it's really important for you to say to yourself, stop. I know what to do here. Or if you don't know exactly what to do, because I don't think I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, there are different things we can try. And that's why I specifically want to hear from different people about their experiences with racing hearts and shortness of breath, so that I can tell you what I think and give you some ideas as to what you could do for them. All right, so find a comfortable position, and you could either do this seated, and we'll go to something standing in a few moments. But I want you to close your eyes. And the idea of the breathing scale is in the same way that if we were singing, we would be going do, re, mi, fa. So we're going to start with breathing in for 2. And the exhalation is going to be at your own pace. Okay. And we have to recognize that everybody is going to have a different kind of breathing pattern that may or may not be more comfortable for them. Okay. For some reason, when it comes to breathing, everybody wants to tell you the best method of breathing. And there's no one best method that's going to be the same for COPD and obstructive diseases like asthma, pulmonary fibrosis, COVID. And so I'm going to show you a number of different things today, and I'd like you to try them out and experiment with them, but to experiment with them when you're not under distress. Like, the time to remember that you should have packed that life jacket is not after you've fallen in the water. So practice these things when you have control, so that when you are in an emergency situation, they come back to you. So nice and easy, we're going to start with a count of 2, and you're going to breathe in, and then nice and easy, you're going to exhale, but not forcefully. You're just going to let the air out. Now, often people will ask me, is it better to breathe in through your nose? Is it better to breathe in through your mouth? And the answer to most questions you're going to ask today is it depends. Okay, so if your nose is completely stuffed, well, then it's probably not going to be that good for you to breathe in through your nose. Likewise, when you breathe in through your nose, there are certain benefits that your body gets. So number one, the air is warmed, the air is filtered, and the air is humidified. Okay. But as we begin to exercise more, there's a limit to the volume of the air that you could take in through your nose. And even marathoners will breathe in through their mouth and out through their mouth at certain points. So I'm going to leave it up to you what you choose as best for yourself. And I encourage you to experiment with different things. But there's only 4 possibilities we could do here. We could breathe in through the nose, out through the nose. We could breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. We could breathe in through the mouth, out through the mouth. And we could breathe in through the mouth, out through the nose. Okay. So those are your 4 flavors, not Baskin Robbins of breathing, but try them out and ask yourself. And particularly, I believe this is important for everybody, but so much more important for people who are undergoing care for post-COVID, is to consistently check in with yourself and ask yourself, is this making me feel better? Is this making me feel worse? Is this not changing anything for me at all? And keep a record so that you can track patterns, okay? That's what I do. When I talk to patients, I'm keeping notebooks and I'm tracking patterns. It's how we've gotten the minuscule amount of information that we have. But as of this moment, I've seen 149 COVID patients, and I have hundreds of pages of notes. And we do see similarities amongst people, and we are seeing progress in people. But keep in mind that no healthcare professional, and this is true more than any other time in history, we don't know much more than you know. And we are counting on you to teach us. And we can give you things to try, but we need feedback as to what's working and what's not working. So I think it makes sense. Why don't we start by breathing in and out through our nose? And the first thing I want you to do, I want you to breathe in for a count of 2. You can close your eyes for this if you like. And I want you to blow out at your own pace. So that means if it's in for 2, out for 2, great. If it's in for 2, out for 3, great. If it's in for 2, out for 4, so be it. But what we're doing, this is the equivalent of the beginning stretch, okay? So if I wanted to stretch my hamstrings, I'm not gonna plummet myself to the floor because I'm sure both my hamstrings would snap in half anyway, but I'm gonna start with the earlier stretch, okay? The light stretch, and once I get to here and things loosen up, I'm gonna go to here And once I get to here, I have no choice because that's as far as I can bend down because my hamstrings are so tight. But the idea is that we're going to start slow. And what you should feel over the course of the first 2 minutes, and I know I'm talking a lot, I'm going to shut up in a second, but I feel it's important to lay the groundwork. But what you should feel as we do this is your airways should become more relaxed and your breathing should become easier. So we're going to start. Close your eyes and take a nice easy breath in through your nose for a count of 2. And we're going to breathe in, and then let it out through your nose. Breathe in, let it out. Breathe in, and let it out. And open your eyes for 1 second. Show of hands. Does anybody feel any different after those 3 breaths? Okay, so at least at least a handful, but I think a few more than a handful. How many people feel better after 3 breaths? Okay, so keep in mind that we hold our breath a lot. Okay, we're used to like grinning and bear it and power through things. Okay, and the reason why I stopped you after only 3 breaths is because I want you to recognize and prove to you that look what you just did in 3 breaths. You already feel different, which means that you have some control over this. Okay, and there's one of my favorite sayings is by basketball coach John Wooden. It says, don't let the things that you cannot do interfere with the things that you can do. And we tend to think in terms of all or nothing. We tend to think in black and white, and we tend to think that things are either all great or they all suck. On any given day, some things are going to be great, some are going to suck, most are going to be somewhere in the middle, right? And the fact is, some days it's going to be all great, and take that in and appreciate that for the gift it is. And some days it's all going to suck. Hopefully today it's going to be better than suck. So let's start again. Close your eyes, nice, easy breathing in through your nose and blow it out. Nice, easy breathing in through your nose and blow it out. And I'm going to stop talking in a second so you can go at your own pace. And if it feels like you're getting dizzy or lightheaded, you can alternate or take a break in between each breath. Nice, easy breathing in. As you're breathing, be aware of where your shoulders are. Are they up near your ears or can they become more relaxed? Is your chest squeezing forward or can you open it up a little bit more? Nice, easy breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. I'm sorry, out through your nose, that one. As you do this, try not to think too much. Just focus on the air, focus on the breath. And if any thoughts pop into your head, just kind of acknowledge them and let them go. Nice, easy breathing. If you want, as you breathe in, you can tilt your head back a little bit to make room for that air. And as you blow out, tilt your head forward. Breathing in for 2. And out. Breathing in for 2. And out. out. Then let's do one more. And relax and open your eyes. Take it easy, everybody. All right, next we're gonna do in for 3, okay? So you're gonna breathe in for a count of 3. And again, you're gonna breathe in through your nose this time. I'm gonna ask you to choose. You can breathe out through your nose or out through your mouth. If you're gonna blow out through your mouth, blow out through what we call pursed lips. And you don't even have to blow hard. We don't want you to blow out hard. We just want you to create a space where that air has a space to come out. So let's start by breathing in, 2, 3, and relax. Nice deep breath in, 2, 3, and out gently. Nice breath in, 2, 3. And some people find it helpful to kind of visualize a color moving in and a different color blowing out, maybe green moving in and orange or black moving out. Or some people may find it helpful to see it as sort of like a puff of air or clouds moving in and then clouds moving out. But what we want is we want to bring in that good oxygen, rich air, and blow out carbon dioxide. In for 3. And out. Now, if you're finding that breathing in for 3 is too much for you, you can also go back to breathing in for 2. And again, you should only be taking the breath that is comfortable for you in terms of depth, length, and speed. Nice, easy breathing in through your nose. And if and when you feel ready, if you want to try to breathe in for a count of 4, you can do that as well. So you breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and let it out. And if you feel like your eyes are getting heavy, just let them close and let them fall heavy. If you feel like your head is getting heavy, it's okay. You can put it down. And if you feel like breathing in for 4 is a stretch, then feel free to stick with 3 or 2. We'll do 3 more breaths. And if and only when you're ready, feel free to open your eyes and return to the room with calm. Can I hear people's reaction to that? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I know. Well, I had a hard time breathing out through my nose, so that's much better for me. That felt great. The first exercise was a struggle.
So breathing out through your nose was a struggle.
Yeah, it could just be my sinuses.
Well, you don't even have to come up with an answer. Okay, you don't have to be defensive about it. We're not going to tell you bad nose breathing. But think about it. You just learned something about yourself, right? So you learned that breathing in through your nose is okay. Blowing out through your mouth is better, right?
Right.
So that's a strategy. That's a different try. You go to the store, you try on different pants, you see which ones you like the best. Okay. Eventually you figure out what makes you look the best and feel the best. So how do you feel, Diane, comparatively to when you started?
Today, when I started today? Good. It's relaxing. That's how I try to go to sleep at night, by doing that.
Okay. Someone said calming. Someone said breathing out, in and out felt good, but caused a lot of yawning. So you know what I do if I'm doing deep breathing and I start to yawn? I yawn and let it go and then get back to the deep breathing. Hard for me to breathe through the nose since COVID too. So Dawn, are you saying in or out or both?
I would like to.
Go ahead, Lucille.
I'm getting confused with the mute and unmute. I find breathing through the nose is wonderful, but if I breathe too deeply, I have to stop myself from coughing.
Okay, so anyone else have that experience? Okay, so let me explain what that is to you, okay? So if I were to try to stretch my hamstrings, or anyone ever been to a personal trainer that really should have been a prison guard. So, the thing is that if they push you too much, right, what happens? Your muscles bounce back and go into spasm, right? And this is very common in people with respiratory disease and or tight airways, asthmatics. So, Lucille, what I would encourage you to do, or I would encourage anybody else to do, if you can get up to a count of 2 or 3, but if you go up to 4 and that triggers a cough, then I would stick with 2. And when 2 feels like it's too easy for you, then you move up to 3. Now, we only did that for a few minutes, okay? And people already feel, Sherry said she increased her oxygen from 92 to 96. So that's awesome. Somebody said relaxed but freezing. Okay, we'll talk about it. Felt a lot of constriction when inhaling around my ribs. Okay, so let's talk about those different things. So if you're having trouble with inhalation, okay, and one thing that I ask people often is I'll ask them, is it that you have no trouble breathing into a certain point and then you hit a block? Is it that you feel more resistance from the beginning? So in other words, more resistance to getting that breath going, or is it that you feel resistance throughout the entire breath? So Lucille, what I would suggest to you is start with 2, okay? When that feels like it's getting too easy for you, and it may take longer, right? Because the tighter you are, the longer it's going to take for you to warm up. And however long it takes, that's how long it takes. And if it means that you only get to 2, you only get to 2, and that's okay. Okay, but what we want to do is we want you to move as far as you can move before it becomes uncomfortable. Okay, because one of the things with breathing and one of the things with COVID in particular is that when you start to over push, that's when we start to lose ground. Okay, so it means if you were walking and you feel like, hey, this is getting to be too much for you, you need to stop and take a break. It's all about supply and demand. And one of the reasons why people cough is because if they're not used to taking that deep breath And think about it. Many of us are used to taking really shallow breaths, right? When you need that big breath, it's not there for you. It's like if you held your leg in a position for a long car ride, and then you get out and it takes a little while for that muscle to loosen up again. And it's the same thing with the muscles inside the respiratory system. So I encourage you to go as slow as you need to, and basically see what feels right to you. Okay, if it feels, whatever feels right to you, there's absolutely no right or wrong to this. Okay, and you know, there's a lot of breathing coaches that I over the years, and they'll say, you have to breathe in and out through your nose, or you have to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. You have to make your exhalation longer than you. There's a whole bunch of things, okay? But the fact of the matter is, there's no have to. There's experiment. And one of the ways that you can experiment with this is by making a little table, two sides, in, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the inside, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the outside. Try in for 2, out for 2. See, how does that feel? In for 2, out for 3. How does that feel? In for 2, out for 4. How does that feel? It's like trying on a pair of pants. It's like 30, 30, 32, 30, 32, 32. And again, it's finding, and in particular with COVID more than any other condition I've ever treated, it's finding your own Da Vinci code and finding the combination that works right for you, and keeping in mind that what may work in one situation may not work in another situation. Other comments or experiences?
I would like to just say one thing more, Noah.
Sure.
Please. I find that sitting and relaxing and in the home, I can breathe through my nose very easily. The minute I start walking outside, it's my mouth, and I become short quite quickly.
Right. And that's a very common situation, right? Because it's based on supply and demand. So when you get out, okay, and the difference in Lucille, you know, because you've been to the pulmonary center before, but walking on the treadmill is a lot easier than walking outside for most people. Some people will say, hey, you know, I can walk 30 minutes on the treadmill, but I walk outside and all of a sudden I'm short of breath. Couple of suggestions. Number one, start out slower, okay? Number two, go at your own pace. Number three, try to tune out the things that are going on around you, because it's very distracting when you get out. There's a lot of stuff going on, and we see people and we see cars and we see all these other things. So I would say, you know, only continue walking when you feel like you've mastered the pace that you've got right now. And as slow as that seems, that's a worthwhile exercise. And the other thing I'm going to tell you, and this is going to have to do with walking, and it's also going to have to do with recovery from shortness of breath. So there are certain positions that are going to be more ideal for helping you catch your breath. So when you feel like you're getting short of breath, there are certain positions that you can assume that are going to give you the greatest advantage and the greatest possibility of recatching your breath. One of them is leaning forward on your arms, okay? And there's a reason for this. So if you think about this, I'm doing this right now on a desk, okay? I can also lean forward on my knees if I have to, supporting my upper extremity. I can also hold on to a treadmill if I have to. I can also hold on to a rolling walker. I can also put my elbows down on the desk like this. I can also be sitting in a chair and lean forward and put my elbows down. Why does fixing the upper extremities work to help us become less short of breath? Number one, this is called open chain activity, okay? When I'm moving my arms and my arms are not connected, they're free to move around in space. And when I'm in open chain, my chest does things like this and like this. My back does things like this and like this. My shoulders do things like this, like this, like this, right? That's open chain, but it's poor mechanical advantage for the respiratory muscles. When I fix the upper extremity, okay, my hands are no longer the open, free moving arm. my hands now become the fixed part that my thorax was before. And all the muscles that I just mentioned to you, chest, back, and shoulders, all work in their reverse action by helping to elevate the rib cage. Okay. The other thing is that by leaning forward, all of your abdominal contents drop forward and clear the way for the diaphragm, because we have our abdominal contents here, diaphragm sits on top, lungs are above that, the diaphragm contracts downward, and that creates a negative pressure that causes the lungs to inflate. But if we have extra weight around our stomach, if we just had a big meal, if we haven't gone to the bathroom in a couple of days, all these things will increase the intra-abdominal pressure and increase the resistance against which the diaphragm has to contract. So by leaning forward like this or like this, the abdominal contents drop forward and clear the way. Anyone else want to have another comment on their experience there? Sylvia? You're muted. Yep, there you
Hi.
go.
Thank you so much, Noah. This is a godsend. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm short of breath right now. I was short of breath before we began the exercises. I tried to take my O2 sats before we get started, and the best I got was 74. Now I think maybe I've got a circulatory problem. I just had pulmonary function test done a week before last. And the word I think is dyspnea. I don't have it written in front of me. What is it?
Dyspnea.
That's it.
Dyspnea. That's your perception of shortness of breath.
Dyspnea.
Dyspnea. Yep.
My perception. It was unspecified. I get short of breath talking on the telephone. I'm still not mobile. This has been going on since April.
Did you have COVID?
I was diagnosed presumptive positive for COVID.
Okay.
By my PCP, and I had loss of sense of taste and smell, neurological issues, lack of coordination and gait, gastrointestinal, heart palpitation, the whole gamut. And also O2 sats that were registering down about 86. And my PCP wanted me to get to the hospital, but there was a field hospital being built by the National Guard here in Hanover, New Hampshire, and I didn't want to go unless it was absolutely.
Sylvia, I don't mean to cut you off, but do you have a question that you want me to ask?
And in terms of getting short of breath just talking,
right,
and having very limited mobility, and bending forward seemed to help.
Yep.
I do have the yawning. Thank you. I'll take all hints and tips and try to put it into play.
All right. So here's some other things. So a lot of people are awakened by shortness of breath, right? Anyone, show of hands, how many people wake up short of breath sometimes? Okay. So there's a number of different possible reasons for this. People breathe often more shallowly when they sleep. It could also be positional. It could also be that when you're lying down as compared to standing up, a lot more blood is returning to the heart. And so there's increased pressure in the thorax. One thing you could do, and sometimes what we're trying to figure out is how do we just break the cycle, okay? And what happens very often is if we're short of breath, or it's very similar to if we are choking or we swallow something and it goes down the wrong pipe, it's very easy to panic, right? Because we have this immediate kind of like, oh my God. And I've had this a few times. If you listen to me and you've heard enough of my talks, you know about the time when I got a piece of chicken kebab off the street and it got stuck in my throat and I was going to get out and knock on the cab driver's door to try to help me. And then I decided to eat a second piece of chicken kebab and that knocked the first one down. But it's terrifying, right? It's a panic inducing situation. And that panic inducing situation is going to trigger the fight or flight response. And one of the things with many conditions where you have shortness of breath is that you have a hyperactive fight or flight response anyway, and particularly with COVID, which is so mediated by inflammation and sympathetic tone. So if you find yourself waking up and you are short of breath, it's hard to do, but say something to yourself, talk to yourself and say, stop, I know what to do here, okay? And in the same way that I told you that leaning over gets the abdominal contents out of the way, rolling onto your side, okay, will help to drop the abdominal contents forward and give your diaphragm the smoothest excursion possible. And it's sometimes a process. It's sometimes something that may take a few seconds, even to a few minutes, to really catch your breath. But it's so much better to know, hey, guess what? My car is going really fast, but at least I know I have brakes, right? And I know that if I keep holding on, I'm going to be able to slow the car down. So I encourage you to try to just roll onto your side. You can even put your hands down on the bed to further support your respiratory muscles and just start to breathe in through your nose and out gently through your mouth. And very often when you're in that stressed out position, even that first breath is enough to just sort of relax your shoulders and give you that ability to say, you know what, I have something I can do here. And when one breath can do that, or when 3 breaths can do that, imagine what 5 minutes of breathing will do. And imagine what 10 minutes or 15 minutes of breathing will do, or 30 minutes of breathing with meditation, okay? And the other thing that these things do, in addition to relaxing the airways, is they also decrease sympathetic tone, and they're the portal to the parasympathetic nervous system that helps us rest, digest, and heal. Kimberly, question.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to find out how often we should be doing that.
So again, I'm not going to tell you how many times you should do it, okay? Think of it like this. How often do you take a drink each day?
A lot.
Alcohol?
Oh, no, I thought you meant my coffee or water.
No, I'm just kidding. But
I looked at my coffee.
No judges. But we drink when we're thirsty, right? We drink when
Right.
we're thirsty.
Yeah.
We eat when we're hungry. So we know what this tool is used for. This tool is used for calming us down. This tool is used for giving us greater control of our breathing. This tool is used
Right.
for calming the sympathetic nervous system. So number one, it doesn't hurt to start first thing in the morning, okay? Because even just a few minutes, because we know that shortly before we wake up, there's a surge of catecholamines, which are like adrenaline and things like that, okay? So it's helpful to start the day with just a few minutes of deep breathing. Somebody asked a question and said, I wake up with mucus blocking my throat, okay? And that's another situation that could potentially cause you deep breathing, shortness of breath. But the thing about that is that when we're upright, okay, gravity will bring everything down. And if you think about, give me just 1 second because I meant to bring something here. All right, so this right here is a trachea. Okay, a trachea is a windpipe. This is the windpipe. This right here is called the carina. This is where we split into right and left main stem bronchi. One of them is called the bronchus. And then these are further smaller branching bronchi. And then it continues to branch and continues to branch. So the point in telling you this is that if you look at this right here, you notice that it's pointing downward, right? You notice that this one particular bronchus is pointing downward. And this one particular bronchus or these bronchi right here are pointing downward. So if you think about this like a ketchup bottle, right? If I wanted to get some ketchup on my fries, and this is what I do, well, not much ketchup's going to come out of it, right? I mean, you'd have to shake it so furiously that everybody in the diner would be covered in ketchup. But if you notice, now this is my right, okay, this is my right lung, this is my left lung. This is me laying on my left side. And now you see that all these things that were pointing downward before, or rather upward before, downward before, are now draining in this direction. So that gravity is going to assist with it bringing up. So this right here, and keep in mind that the cough mechanism is only effective in the larger airways. So if you put your hand, on the top of your sternum and then go down, you'll feel a little notch over here. This is where this is. And so if you think about it, if I'm coughing and coughing and coughing, but gravity is bringing everything down, then I can cough till the cows come home, nothing's going to come up. And this is me lying on my right side, and this is the best position to drain the left lung. And this is me lying back down flat. But think about the ketchup bottle again. If we laid the ketchup bottle on its side overnight, then at the beginning of the day, all that ketchup's going to be up here. So that's the perfect time to do some deep breathing in order to help clear those secretions from you. But again, if you wake up and you're short of breath, it's hard to do, but you get better at it the more you do. It's like any emergency fire drill procedure. And again, practice it when you're not in distress, but say, stop, I know what to do here. Roll onto my side, put my hands down to help with breathing. And if you're having trouble breathing in, okay, the first thing is to focus on the exhalation. So if, we all feel like we're like gasping for air, but you're not going to get that air in by continuing to gasp. The way you're going to get that air in is by putting on the brakes and blowing that air out. Any questions about that so far?
I have a quick question. What if shortness of breath is preceded by vertigo?
So you get vertigo and then you get shortness of breath
Yes,
every time?
yes.
Okay, so that's a different ball game altogether. So in that situation, if we can say, hey, the shortness of breath is being caused by the vertigo or is an associated symptom of the vertigo, then we have two options. We can treat the vertigo. You can diagnose and treat the vertigo, and there's certainly medicines for that. There's also something called vestibular rehabilitation, which helps with inner ear balance and equilibrium problems. Or the other thing that you can do is you can, when you start to get this vertigo, and I'm wondering if you started the deep breathing as soon as you got the vertigo, could it possibly push the vertigo back? So in other words, if you feel, hey, I'm getting up and now it feels like the room's spinning, I would say, again, talk to yourself. Say, stop. I know what to do here. Breathe in. Breathe in. And it's a similar type of situation where, people who wake up and their heart is racing, right? I know a lot of people describe this, or they'll feel like an internal vibration that, although we don't know exactly what it is, we believe it's somehow related to dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. Sometimes position change will help you to re-equilibrate. And particularly with the fast heart rate, a lot of times when people get these fast heart rates, and there's a ton of different reasons why people get this pre-COVID. Post-COVID, there's even more reasons, but most of the time it's not a dangerous arrhythmia. It's what we call sinus tachycardia. And sometimes it's a response to blood pooling in the lower body. And one thing you can do is to lie down, switch positions, and sometimes bringing one or both knees to your chest will increase the pressure and increase the venous return to your thorax and your heart. And because there's more venous return, the heart can slow down because it's beating more with each breath. I want to do a standing relaxation exercise with you for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to take questions and comments about shortness of breath and moving forward. So if you feel up to it, you can stand for this. If you don't feel up to it, you can sit for this. If you feel like you want to stand for it and then you don't feel like continuing standing, by all means, sit down. And I'm going to just and I'm going to unmute here. So the key to this is to find relaxation. And the key to this is to find a pattern that's going to be comfortable for you. So first thing I want you to do, and you'll be happy to know last weekend we shot a ton of Tai Chi and Qigong moves with Brian Traskos, and we'll have those available soon. One thing is find a comfortable position for your arms, and just, it seems to help if you kind of hook your thumbs over your pants as if you were in some kind of a draw, and just close your eyes and take some nice easy breaths in through your nose and out gently through either your mouth or your nose. Nice easy breath in through your nose and out gently through your mouth or your nose. And with each breath, I want you to try to think about your eyes becoming heavier, your head becoming heavier, and your shoulders becoming more and more relaxed. And I want you to put your hands down at your side, and this time as we breathe in, raise your shoulders up. And as you blow out, squeeze and hold your shoulder blades together. And let them down. So we're breathing in, shoulder blades together and squeeze, and down. Breathing in, shoulder blades together, squeeze, and down. Breathing in, shoulder blades together, blowing out, and down. And now I just want you to let your hands float up to about shoulder level, and then turn your hands over and just very gently imagine that you're pushing down on some water, almost like a canoe. So let's breathe in, and then nice deep breath in through your nose, and out through your mouth. Nice deep breath in and out. Take your right hand. Keep breathing as you do this. Let's go down our arm. When we get down here, turn your arm over, come back up. Down the arm, turn the arm over, switch sides. Breathing in. Breathing in. Now what I want you to do, I want you to face your thumbs forward and then just turn your thumbs to the back as you breathe in. Head goes back and blow it out and bring your hands down to your knees. Breathing in. Squeezing the shoulder blades in the back and blowing out. Breathing in and blowing out. And breathing in and blowing out. And now we're going to raise one arm up. Put your other hand on your hip and just slide your hand down the side as you reach over and hold 2, 3, 4, switch sides. So this hand goes on my hip, this hand comes up, and I slide this hand down my hip as I lean over and hold 2, 3, come back up. Imagine you are now kneeling down, scooping up that waterfall and letting it come down your back refreshingly. Let's go again and scoop, breathing in. Let's come down and scoop. Bring it in. And one more. And then I want you to just move your hands in a slight circle like this. Imagine that you're sort of a sorcerer getting ready to cast some kind of spell. Or for the mahjong players in the room, imagine you're just mixing up your tiles. And let's go out to the side. And as you do this, feel what your body is telling you, okay? Feel that squeeze in the shoulder blades if that feels good. Feel that stretch in the chest. Nice and easy breathing in. Turn to the left and blow out. Come back to the center as you breathe in. Turn to the right and blow out. Breathing in as you turn to the center. Blowing out as you turn to the left. Breathing in as you come to the center. And put your arms down and just put your hands together like this and just nice and easy. Close your eyes and listen to the running water and imagine yourself at the base of that babbling brook, at peace in nature. If you want, you could bounce your legs a little bit, and then I want you to just clap. Put your hands together like this, as if you're making a pot on a wheel, and you can reminisce back to that time that Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore were making some pottery and ghosts. And when you're ready, put your hands back on your belt, put your head down, close your eyes, and think about how great it is to be alive today and to have some control over many things in our lives, even though there are still things that we can't control. Or one of my favorite sayings is, relax, nothing is in control, because that's really the truth of the matter. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes and relax. All right. Would anybody like to share their experience?
I mean, with the exercise we just did? Is that the?
Or life in general, if you have
Oh,
something you want to offer us?
no, just when I do, I'm past 7 months long haul. And I did it when I did the boot camp too, but when we do the breathing, like where we deep breathe, deep breathe, deep breathe, and we do it for a long period of time. Is it normal to have, I always get it and I still get it. It starts to it's either fatigue or it's not pain so much as just sort of, it just feels sort of searing, but through the throat and lungs. Is that normal where it starts to kind of become uncomfortable?
So the question is that normal? No.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean,
if you had never had COVID, would that happen? Probably not, right?
oh no, I was fine before COVID.
What I would say, and that's a great question to kind of start the Q&A with, but the thing is that if you think about any exercise, whether it's walking or bicep curls or anything else, right? We think of breathing as just sort of this thing that we do, right? And we don't think of it as an exercise. But what I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to back off. And this is true of anything, if anything's causing you discomfort, or if anything is okay for you, but then gets to the point where it's uncomfortable for you, take that as a sign. So you said when you do the deep breathing for a long period of time, so guess what? If you're good till 6 minutes, 6 minutes and 15 seconds, well, guess what? You're starting to experience that sensation. What I would recommend you do is you back off. And a strategy that I started using with people, which seems to work well, is break it up into 3 minutes and 3 minutes, right? So you do 3 minutes, take a break, give your body a chance to reset, do another 3 minutes. Then when you get comfortable with that, you go to 4 minutes the first time, take a little break, 3 minutes the second time. When you get comfortable with that, you go 4 and 4. When you get comfortable with that, 5 and 4. But if you can pinpoint a point or a moment in time where you say, this is no longer fun for me, and I'm starting to develop symptoms that, so a lot of times people want to say, well, is this normal? No, that's not normal, okay? And we don't want to push you there. So in other words, it's not like weightlifting or other things that we know before. We're going to be like, come on, Anna, you could do it for 1 more minute. No, I say back off. I say, let's break the workload down and let's rebuild the strength little by little. And over time, that's how your body will get better. And it serves 2 purposes. It, number one, desensitizes the airways, actually more than 2 purposes, but it desensitizes the airways, making them less reactive. You need to do this. The other thing it does is it quiets the sympathetic nervous system, and it helps to enhance parasympathetic tone. So if something becomes uncomfortable, there's many, 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 many ways to do and accomplish the same thing. And if you have questions, shoot me an email because, again, we've been doing this for a long time and we have a lot of different tricks. There's not one way that's going to work for everybody. And if something doesn't work, we'll try something else. If that doesn't work, we'll try something else. But eventually we will figure something out that will work for you.
Thank you.
Noah?
Yep.
I have a question. I have 3 different kind of things in my medical history. I have a moderate restrictive disorder in my mostly my right lung, and then from breast cancer radiation, and then an interstitial lung disease that was kind of part of the long term of that, and then the COVID. So I don't know what's what, except I know what I was able to do before COVID and what I can't do now. So all this time that I've been thinking I have shortness of breath, I don't know that you'd call it shortness of breath. I don't ever panic. I don't ever feel like I can't catch my breath. instead I kind of do a lot of gasping, and when I try to lengthen the time of my inhalation, it catches, and then I have to exhale.
Okay.
And I just started the second week of boot camp, and I love those breathing days because afterward everything kind of smooths out and my breathing will be much more fluid. Now, if I then take a walk, it can ramp back up. But anyway.
So yeah, so there's a couple of things there. So number one, you had post radiation, you probably had a pneumonitis at some point that,
Yeah.
developed into, you said an interstitial lung disease like pulmonary fibrosis. Is that all from the radiation?
Nobody wants to really, say this is what happened to you.
So let's say even if it is, even if it's not, for anyone who's got a pre-existing respiratory condition, okay, everybody's got a range. Everybody's got a range. And if you do everything right, you'll be at the top of your range. And if you do everything wrong, you'll be at the bottom of your range, right? So we know that you already had a limitation before. Maybe it wasn't as apparent for you. And the other thing is that it's a lot different when you have, let's say, emphysema and you lose maybe like 1 or 2% over the course of a year. So you've lost 10% or 20% of your activity level over the course of 10 years versus the situation of majority of long haulers who were previously young, healthy, and active when all of this comes at one shot. So that's a very different experience. But what I would say is that COVID probably just put you over that tipping point where you become symptomatic at certain levels. And I would say the same things that we would try, if you had never had COVID, we would still try, but we'd go a little bit more slowly. And again, build up over time, build up over time. And because I think you said it was your right lung.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would specifically spend some time lying on your left side doing the breathing exercises. So lying on the left side with your arm up like this, because what this is going to do is this is going to put the air so that it goes deepest into the right lung, because air is always going to rise and blood is always going to go down. So for example, this is my right lung, right? So if I lie down like this lung here, the bottom lung is compressed, but air goes right in here. So we'll address the area that we know is affected. And again, sometimes it's just a matter of working you back up that hill again after you've had a setback. And the other thing is that there are primary issues like shortness of breath, but then there's behavioral issues that we do to adapt to that. So if I know I get short of breath when I walk up the subway stairs, maybe I'm going to take the bus instead. Or maybe if I know that this block has a hill and I don't take the hill, well, eventually, your body's going to decondition. So your body gets good at doing what you ask it to do. And it doesn't matter if it's shortness of breath, chest pain, hip pain, back pain, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you stop avoiding the activities that cause you discomfort, your body deconditions and then you become symptomatic at lower levels. But the beauty of that is, as opposed to what most people hear about chronic progressive disease or chronic diseases, is that you have a chronic progressive disease that gets worse and then you die, which is always like an uplifting sermon that I love it when people get that. But it's that a lot of it is behavioral. And we know, when I said that breathing is multifactorial, very often I'll see somebody a year later and they'll say, you know what, I'm much more short of breath. I was good last year, now I'm much more short of breath. We look at their pulmonary function tests. Their pulmonary function tests are exactly the same. So we know that there have to be things besides just the respiratory system that can cause us discomfort. So we say, okay, well, what's different? Well, you know what? I retired from work. Okay, so you retired from work. So now instead of taking the subway to the city 5 days a week, where you're walking 2 flights down and 2 flights up, which is, essentially 20 blocks a week, time 20 flights a week times 50 weeks a year, that's 1,000 steps. So 1,000 flights. So do you think if you walk 1,000 flights less stairs this year than you did last year, that you're going to decondition a little bit? Absolutely, right? But the other thing it could be is that, hey, what else? So what have you been doing all winter? Well, I've been sitting here watching television and eating. And then you go and you look at someone and say, well, I put on 15 pounds, right? So 15 pounds is a bowling ball. So imagine if you had 15, or if some people put on 25 pounds. So imagine if you had a bowling ball hanging off a rope down here or chained to your thorax. And every time you wanted to take a breath in or out, you had to lift that bowling ball. Well, naturally, you're going to become more short of breath. Naturally, you're going to become more fatigued. Naturally, you're going to try to avoid those activities that cause you discomfort. But that's where the snowball starts, right? And the key is for us to break into that cycle. And don't break into the cycle by trying to do a mile the first day. Break into the cycle. I was talking to someone this week. I said, you know what? He was actually a therapist that I work with. And he said, my dad doesn't want, I said, you know what? Don't start with 50 steps a day, 50 steps the first day, right? Because if I say, hey, walk 1,000 steps the first day and you only get 500 steps, very demoralizing, number one. Your body's not ready for it, right? You just didn't prepare for it. And so the idea is, I'd rather you succeed. I'd rather you get your 50 steps and add 25 steps a day as you feel comfortable, and you can rebuild the body back. And I do believe that COVID, and I did see a question here that says, have you seen people completely recover from COVID shortness of breath? I have specifically the heaviness, burning, and feeling that it's very hard to draw in a breath. I also have times on and off of where I hit a wall and I'm unable to get a breath. It comes and goes. I have no issues exhaling. It seems to be very slowly improving. 8 months. So Jay, the answer is yes, I have. Okay. I have seen people fully recover from COVID. And I expect all of you to get better. Okay. And I know that trust me, this is so frustrating. And I know it's so stressful. And it's stressful, not just because of your own physical limitations, but it's stressful because of the world situation at this moment, right? I mean, this is a condition. It's not like 9/11, which was very stressful, but it brought us together as a country. Like, this is something where everyone's divided. We're divided over masks. We're divided over open and shut. We're divided over this, that, and the other thing. And it's very stressful. And it's not like if you just get sick and your family can comfort you, or your community can comfort you, or your country can commiserate with you, because everybody is undergoing some form of stress. And you have to recognize that. And for me, thankfully, I never had COVID. I am so careful to guard against it, but it's very stressful. I mean, it's been, I closed one business, I opened another business, but I'm not used to, I'm used to success. I'm used to things working right the first time. And, it's stressful for everybody. And the key is, don't give up. It's going to take time. It's going to take more time. And, part of the frustration, I think, is because every time something comes out in the news, we all flock to it like guppies in a fish tank. So it's like you put your finger here and it says 2-week virus and it's like the flu. And we all flock to 2-week virus and it's like the flu. And then we hear it's 4 weeks, but why aren't I better yet? And it's 2 months and it's 4 months. And now it's like, okay, we saw these MRIs of the heart and everyone's like, oh, is my heart okay? Oh, we heard pulmonary fibrosis of the lungs. Oh, are my lungs okay? Long haulers, it's a challenge. I do believe that people are going to get better. I really do believe that in my heart, and I've seen it and I'm seeing it. Okay. I'm seeing evidence of it. And one of the frustrating aspects of this is that it often seems like we're taking 7 steps forward and 6.95 steps back. And, the only thing I can encourage you to do is be happy for that 0.05 step forward that you could take, and try to be patient and we're trying so many different things. But I promise you, I'm not a bullshitter. If you know me, I can't lie, even when it's in my best interest to lie. Okay, I can't do it. I try. I would love to be able to lie, but I can't. But the idea is, if I didn't think there was any hope, I wouldn't be telling you I think there's hope, and I wouldn't be spending any time on a situation that I think is hopeless. I spend my time on things where I think I can make a positive impact. And I could tell you that from the time this begun to now, okay, I've seen individuals get better. I've seen individuals get better, some quicker than others. But as a group, I believe the group is getting better collectively. And is it as fast as anyone wants? No. Is it as much as everybody wants? No. But people are getting better. And what you can't do is you can't get locked in on, is this ever going to get better? Because, and again, what I'm about to say is not in any way, shape, or form to minimize your experience. It's not being callous. It's not being uncaring. But listen, people get hit by trucks, right? People have massive strokes. People have massive heart attacks. Children are born with cancer. And sometimes the recovery is long and arduous, okay? And this is the nature of the world, and it's not fair. And often there's no rhyme or reason to it, okay? But this is very kind of heavy on our shoulders because of, first of all, the numbers of people involved, the magnitude of people, the magnitude of the symptoms, the number of the symptoms. And again, I encourage you to just focus on the things that you can do. When something goes well, be thankful for it. When you have a setback, understand that this is part of it. And, it's part of it. And again, the stock market, I'm not using that literally, but, it's like, we don't expect a straight uphill climb, but if the overall, and this is where diaries and journals come in really handy, continue to look back to where you were and how much more you can do now than you could before. And if you're really stuck, like if you can look yourself in the eye and say, you know what, I am no different than I was 6 months ago, nothing has improved or I'm worse, then please get in touch with me and let's try to figure something out, because even if we don't have the answer, we can get you to the right people. Questions or comments about anything? Shortness of breath, anything else?
Well, no, I'll just add, so I wouldn't say I'm better, but I realized on Thursday actually that all of a sudden I could breathe. Like there was no heaviness, there was no, and I'd forgotten, like I wasn't thinking about it anymore because it just felt normal. And with COVID, I don't declare anything anymore because I declared I was better so many times in the spring. But it does feel qualitatively different. So I don't know if it's helpful to hear that, but it feels great to be able to breathe again.
What was the secret of your success?
Listening to Noah.
Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
But you're right. No, you're so right. I had to slow down.
Like, if I could talk about you for a moment, okay? So Julie is a college professor. She's not a type A personality. She's a type AAA plus personality who doesn't like sitting and doing nothing, okay? And many people here can identify with that. And we want to go, but we don't set our schedules, okay? COVID is like the cruise ship from hell, where you will watch whatever show they have playing that day. You will eat whatever food they're serving that day, okay? And if COVID allows you to take a step forward, then you take that step forward. And one of the challenges with Julie was getting her to buy into the idea that sometimes less is more, okay? And overdoing it is like flooding your engine. And it's only gonna, and that's hard for us, And, there's I believe there's lessons to be learned in most situations, good or bad. For me, I know when things have been up against the wall, like I've learned things about myself, and sometimes they're things that you don't necessarily want to learn. Like, there was a time when my sister said to me, well, maybe you learned something about yourself. And I said, what did I learn? She said, maybe you learned that you're not as strong as you think you are. But I said, how is that a good thing? She said, it's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a real thing. And I believe there are lessons here for everybody. And I believe there are challenges. And I believe this is a reset that we should look at as an opportunity. Believe me, I'm not congratulating you on having COVID. I'm not saying like, this is awesome, I have COVID. But what I'm saying is there are signals and there are lessons to be learned here. And I think globally, there's a lesson to be learned about how we treat the earth and the environment and animals and things like that. But if we go through this whole damn thing and nobody learns anything and we don't become better people for it, then that really sucks. And that's really a waste. Not that I would ever wish COVID on someone, but like, imagine if there was never COVID, we'd be like, shit, today's Sunday, I gotta go to work tomorrow, right? We'd be complaining about going to work. We'd find something. It's human nature, okay? But the idea is to be patient, be gentle with yourself, be compassionate with yourself, and give yourself the gifts and the grace that you need to just keep stepping forward. One of my favorite quotes is, sometimes courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it's that quiet voice inside of you that says, I will try again tomorrow. And that's what I encourage you to do. Other questions, comments?
One question. Is there any difference in shortness of breath or responding to shortness of breath in the shower?
In the shower. Okay, so yeah, so showering is a super challenge for anyone who's got shortness of breath. If you think about why, okay, number one, you have the steam. So when you're breathing in and out that steam, that's like the difference between breathing in water from a straw versus breathing in a milkshake in a straw. So it's like you're working harder to get it in or out. The other thing is this type of activity, overhead activity, upper body activity. If you think about what I said before about open chain versus closed chain, this is very, very challenging to you, okay? So number one, take it slow, okay? Number two, you can try, one hand over your head at a time instead of this, right? Because then at least you have one lung in a good position, one lung not in a good position to accommodate for it. Pace yourself, focus on the breathing techniques, crack the door of the bathroom to minimize the humidity. Those are some things. I mean, if you really are struggling and you can't shower, I would suggest putting a stool in the shower so you can sit during the shower. But showering and dressing is notoriously one of the most breath challenging activities, or two of the most breath challenging activities that there are. But again, think anytime that you're doing this, that's going to make it tougher for you to breathe. So pace yourself, even if you had to lean over for a minute or put your hands on the shower wall for a minute and just lean over and take some breaths. But again, these are techniques to get you through the act, and this should get better over time. Other question? Yep, Diane?
Quick question. First, thank you for spending your time with us.
Sure.
Sylvia said the same thing. Any tips on, like, I feel winded when I'm talking.
Oh yeah, I meant to get to that. Yep. So think about it like this. Anyone here play a wind instrument? Anyone here sing? Anyone here like to scream at their kids? I knew that would get a lot of you. Okay, so think of it like this. Anytime you are blowing out, it's the same as if you were to blow up a balloon, talk, anything like that, you are controlling your breath on exhalation, right? So you get winded when you're walking and talking, or when you're talking a lot, because unlike me, who can talk for about 20 minutes on one breath, and I talk fast, but if you're going like this and you're going, hey, guess what? I'm doing this. And the next thing I knew, I was going like this. And the next thing you do, you're think about what's happening. You're exhaling, 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 exhaling. And then guess what? You're like, so what I would do is I would, number one, and this is good for social skills also, right? Because we live in a society where everyone's talking at each other, right? So at the time when you're supposed to be listening, you could be breathing in. So it's like, here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and start with exercises like that. But this could also have something to do with your voice box. It could also have something to do with laryngeal spasm. There's, again, a whole bunch of stuff that could be there. But I would encourage you, if you can't figure it out, go to an ENT. Let's find out what's going on there. And then one other important thing about breath is that a lot of people in general, but a lot of people with COVID have developed vicious acid reflux. And acid reflux is more important than heartburn, okay? It's not just like, oh, I have the heartburn, I shouldn't have eaten that chili, right? Because what acid reflux can do, our stomach is lined to deal with that acid, right? Our esophagus isn't really, certainly our airways are not, certainly our sinuses are not. So if you're producing a ton of stomach acid, and that acid is not only coming up your esophagus, but creeping over into your trachea and going down into the airways, well, guess what? All that smooth muscle becomes inflamed and can cause increased constriction. And if you have difficulty with your throat or your voice or talking or things like that, I would unquestionably make it your business to see either an ENT or a gastroenterologist, because if you do have reflux, that could be causing a lot of your other issues. I'll take a few more questions if anyone has them.
Noah,
Yes.
what are the symptoms of acid reflux? Do you have to
So-
feel that acid in your throat?
So you don't have to, okay? So some people have what's called silent reflux. And so if they don't feel any heartburn or they don't feel the acid in their throat, but they have a scratchy throat, they have a dry hacking cough when they want to speak. If you watch the first week of boot camp, I recorded that on in the Cayman Islands, and I had to just constantly reshoot and re-edit because I was coughing constantly. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I came back and I went to one of the most brilliant doctors I know named David Kamahar, and he diagnosed it as acid reflux. He worked up my lungs, which would be the normal way to go, but then he diagnosed it as acid reflux. And if you go to our webinars, we have a webinar called Eat, Cough, Breathe, in which he talks about the relationship between eating, coughing, breathing, acid reflux. And in a webinar that I did with Rob Kaner about interstitial lung diseases, one of the things that he says is that, I said, what is the single most important thing in terms of interstitial lung disease and pulmonary fibrosis? He said, number one, getting the right diagnosis. Number two, if you have acid reflux, getting your acid reflux treated. And for some reason, a ton of people have acid reflux with this. We also did a webinar with somebody named Reem Shariah, who is also, she's a Cornell doctor, and she's seeing a ton of patients. She wrote one of the first papers on COVID and gastrointestinal system. So, but symptoms could also be heartburn, sore throat, coughing. It could be also if you wake up in the morning and your sinuses are inflamed, because when you lay back down, again, same thing, that acid could come up and really infiltrate your sinuses. And, one of my big beliefs about COVID is that, inflammation in one area leads to inflammation in other areas, or inflammation begets inflammation. And it's kind of like this net inflammation that we try to little by little reduce in any way we can.
So what do you
Because-
recommend for the acid reflux? Because it's my understanding that Pepcid or any of those over-the-counter meds are not good for you. Doctor has me on it for my COPD and all the meds he has me on.
That Pepcid, what is not good for you? Why?
I don't have the article in front of me, but you can research it. Just it causes other conditions, other problems.
Okay, so great point. Okay, and well, I think it's less related to Pepcid, as much as more like the proton pump inhibitors, things like omeprazole, Protonix, pantoprazole, Prilosec, things of that nature, Nexium, because those do have more side effects. But let me tell you one thing, okay? This is like the lady who swallowed the fly, right? So it's like you swallow the spider to catch the fly, swallow the bird to catch the spider. But I'm a believer in keep the main thing the main thing. That's from Steve Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So keep the main thing the main thing. So if the answer is, guess what? I can't breathe, and I can't breathe because every time I want to take a deep breath, I cough because my lungs are being infiltrated by stomach acid, and now I have inflammation in my airways or reactive airway disease, and now I have aspiration pneumonia, or I can't talk because I have a sore throat. Well, guess what? Which is most important to you? So yeah, medications do sometimes have side effects, and some things do have unintended consequences. But to me, I say, well, what would I rather have, and which one is most affecting your quality of life? And again, which one? And it's sometimes hard to quantify some of these things, but like which one is causing the most inflammation? So guess what? If you can quiet your GI system, and well, guess what? Now you're not getting acid into your lungs, and now you can breathe better, and now you're not getting acid into your sinuses, and you can breathe better, or now your voice is not hoarse when you want to talk, or now you can talk more, or now you're not coughing because of this stomach acid. Well, that's a worthwhile solution, at least temporarily, because I'm a believer, and I have no proof of this, okay? There are certain things I used to say, if I tell you it, it's because I've seen it, and you could put it in the bank. I can't say that about COVID. A lot of the things I think and I've seen, I don't have any proof of, but if you can quiet that inflammation and overall your net inflammation gets better, well, I think that could be a worthwhile thing, but that's a discussion that you have to have with your doctor and or doctors. And it's been tough. It's getting easier, but at the beginning it was super tough to see specialists because so many people were told that everything's normal when you know darn well everything is not normal. So I would say until we find an answer, keep digging and keep trying to find a different doctor.
I would like to say one thing.
Yep.
I coughed for 20 years, and I went to every pulmonologist in New York City. And then I found a doctor who was willing to expand my horizons. And I went to an ENT doctor, and in 5 minutes, he found out that I had paresis. And
gastroparesis?
It just said paresis on the
diaphragm?
No, in my throat.
Okay.
I had one one flap, one lobe that didn't work correctly. It flapped instead of, so my breathing, I couldn't really breathe well. And he gave up on me, but then she sent me to another enterologist at MSK, and she gave me many medications that did help, but for a short time. And then the last time I saw her, she gave me an injection into my, I don't know if, into my larynx, I guess, for the nerves. And I had 2 injections apart, one on one side, one on the other, and it helped. But helped with the cough. But I mean, I do have reflux, and I think my whole coughing stems from the fact of reflux. But I also had MAC. I went through everything, and
well, if you have MAC, one of the hallmarks of MAC is cough, chronic productive cough. So, you know, in a situation like that, like I wouldn't think reflux first. I would think secretions, and I would get a device like the Aerobica or the Acapella or something like that.
I have everything. I have everything. In 20 years, I have everything that existed on this planet. But I believe a lot of the coughing comes from the reflux, because sometimes, the other night I took a pill and it got stuck in my throat. And as you went through your whole dissertation on not being able to breathe, I felt every pain that you were talking about, because I couldn't breathe. And eventually I just kept drinking water and it subsided. But now my cough has come back more.
You have to try to get your reflux under control if that's what you think it is. Okay. Again, you have to keep the main thing the main thing. When I used to work EMS, I got called to a job at Central Park, and somebody had swallowed a chicken nugget, and he thought it went into his lungs. And so I got called by another ambulance because they knew my specialty, and I could hear from listening to the guy's lungs where the chicken nugget was. As crazy as that sounds. And I was able to put him in the position on the ambulance so that the exact place where his chicken nugget was gravity assisted. And I did some chest therapy on him where I was beating on his back. And sure as the sky is blue, this guy coughed up an entire chicken nugget. And he was able to go back to the party. We didn't have to take him to the hospital. I had another friend who was putting some stuff up on one of those pin boards, like with the push pins, and he was holding a push pin in his mouth, and he coughed and swallowed the push pin, except it went into his airway instead of his esophagus. And the doctors wanted to put him under anesthesia and scope him and take it out. But again, we were able to see exactly where it was, and we put him in the right position, and we were able to get him to cough up the push pin without surgery or anything like that. Anyway, I think we're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if you have questions, feel free to email me. We are doing consultations both remotely and in person at the Pulmonary Wellness Foundation's COVID Rehab and Recovery Clinic in New York City, which is on 43rd and 2nd. We do take insurance if you've got it. Tonight at 7 p.m., as we do every Sunday, which is going to move to Wednesdays, we have It Starts With Yes, which is dealing with emotional and psychological and other challenges related to dealing with COVID and other medical conditions with Dr. Lori Nadell and social worker Erica Mastrobuono. And I'm there for comic relief to shoot little spitballs from the peanut gallery. And I hope you'll join us there tonight. If not, I hope you have a great Sunday, and hang in there, guys. It's gonna get better. We just have to keep trying different things. So have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Noah.
right, guys, have a great weekend.
You too.